Through selfless service, you'll always be fruitful and find the fulfillment of your desires. Hare Krishna to all the viewers. In this video, I will be talking about the Mahabharata and the Gita. I hope this video helps you to find your inner Krishna and enhance it, which is your conscience. The Bhagavad Gita is a Sanskrit poem written about 2500 years ago, and it's a small part of the epic Mahabharata. It is a conversation between Lord Krishna and Partha Arjuna. This conversation is about 700 verses in which Krishna is trying to convince distressed Arjuna, who is unable to fight war against his dear family. And it happened a few minutes before the Kurukshetra war in the middle of the field. Mahabharata can be complicated and difficult to understand, but it's worth learning about it. Learning and understanding the Bhagavad Gita is a life changer. It changes your whole perspective of how you look and perceive things around you. It teaches you the way of living and acquiring knowledge. The Mahabharata strongly recommends you to support the good and fight for it with your whole heart, and to do your duty with full responsibility, not watching for rewards. All the challenges that we face today in our lives were faced by Arjuna too on the day of the war. When we read the Bhagavad Gita, we can find solutions to all our problems in our life, and we're led into the right path in life. What led to the war happening? Whose side do we support as audience? Who is the good person or who is the bad person? All these questions can be answered when you read the Mahabharata. To understand the Gita, we need a basic understanding of the Mahabharata, which is what I will be clearing today. I'll be breaking down the Mahabharata for you to understand, as it's difficult to read the original Mahabharata. The original is more than 10,000 verses long. All the information is brief, but it will help you understand the Gita. Many thousands of years ago, the setting is in Hastinapura. This is a city in Uttarakhand. The king had two sons, the older one named Dhritarashtra and the younger one named Pandu. Dhritarashtra was blind, and a kingdom cannot be ruled by a blind king. Hence the throne went to Pandu. But unfortunate befell upon the kingdom. Pandu had unintentionally irritated a sage, and in return he gave him a dreadful curse. The sage furiously said, "As a punishment, you shall never be able to have children." Pandu thought to himself, "What is the use of a king without the ability to produce an heir?" Sorrowfully, he left he left the throne and went to a forest with his two wives, Kunti and Madri. On the other hand, Dhritarashtra was filled with alacrity and happiness as Pandu gave up the throne. Dhritarashtra could keep the kingdom safe for his own heirs. Now, in the forest, Pandu would have children. A shocker, isn't it? Well, here's what happened. When Kunti was a child, she had helped a sage, and in return for the favor, he taught her a mantra, which if she chants with utmost devotion to a particular god, the god would come and give her a child. In this way, Kunti became the mother of three children from the gods, Yama or Dharma, Pavan, the god of air, and Indra. She named them Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Now, looking at the second wife, she started to get a bit jealous of the elder wife, and Kunti taught her the mantra as well. And Madri became the mother of two lovely twins, Nakul and Sahadev, from the gods of medicine Ashwini. Now, this was the Pandava family. Soon after this, a calamity befell over the Pandavas. Pandu died. The grief was too much for bereft Madhuri, and she jumped into the funeral pyre. Now Kunti was to take care of the five boys. As she couldn't do so, She returned to Hastinapura, hoping for Dhritarashtra to have mercy on her. Now coming back to the kingdom, Dhritarashtra had married a princess by the name Gandhari, and they had 101 children. Now these 101 children were born at the same time. They had been incubated in mud pots. There were 100 sons and one daughter. Now this was the Kaurava clan. When Kunti turned up, Dhritarashtra couldn't just kick her out, so he took them in. What are 5 kids going to do? There's already like 100 kids in the palace, thought Dhritarashtra to himself. Now this is where the root cause of the Kurukshetra war starts. You see, the Pandavas are gods in other forms. And as gods, they excelled in every field of knowledge and won the hearts of the public. And this kind of gave a bad image to the Kauravas. And they were filled with vexation, especially Duryodhana, the eldest of the Kuru clan. Dhritarashtra was worried that they might consider one of the Pandavas as the future king. And to get rid of them, he sent the Pandavas to a distant place which was built with lac. Lac is a highly flammable substance, and he was going to set fire that night. Yudhishthira, one of the Pandavas, heard this nefarious plan, and the Pandavas escaped to the forest that very night, making the king believe that they were dead. A few years later, there was an archery contest for which Arjuna attended in disguise. The winner of the contest would marry Draupadi, the princess of the Panchala kingdom. All the princes failed, except for Arjuna, and he married Draupadi. A point to be noted here is that Duryodhana was also part of the archery competition, and he recognized Arjuna immediately, which infuriated him. Now the Pandavas were happily returned home, and they said, "Mother, look what we have here." His mother, who didn't even turn to look at them, said, "Whatever it is, please share between yourselves." Well, it was said, and in this way, Draupadi became the wife of all 5 brothers. Now, whereas in the kingdom, Dhritarashtra was pressurized to give half the kingdom to the Pandavas, as now the whole kingdom knows that the Pandavas are alive. Scintillatingly, Dhritarashtra gave the worst parts of the kingdom to the Pandavas. Not very surprisingly, the Pandavas made their part of the kingdom an exquisite and glittering new capital for Hastinapura. As a result of this, Duryodhana became furious and came up with a new plan to destroy their cousins, which was inviting the Pandavas, specifically Yudhishthira, for a game of dice. Point to be noted is that the game of dice was pure luck. Duryodhana rigged the game, and when the Pandavas played, each side staked their possessions one by one. Pandavas were on the verge of losing. Yudhishthira ended up staking themselves and their wife Draupadi. Dhritarashtra knew all this and ordered Duryodhana to give the Pandavas their possessions. Humiliated, the Pandavas returned to their kingdom. After a while, Duryodhana called for another match of dice, and this time it was only one match, and the loser should go into 13 years of hiding, and if they're found on the 13th year, they should go back into 13 years of hiding. This time the Pandavas lost and went into hiding, and they returned after 13 years to claim their kingdom. Duryodhana flatly refused them to give them any property. Now the Pandavas were irritated by the Kauravas and called for war, and this is how the Kurukshetra war began. To conclude this video, let me give you a piece of information. How exactly was the great epic written? Legend says that Lord of Knowledge himself, Ganesha, wrote this epic, while Sage Vaishya narrated the verses without any pauses. I thank everyone who watched this video patiently, I hope this encourages and motivates you to read the Gita as now you know the Mahabharata. Hare Krishna.